Welcome back to the Commanders Declassified. We are finally back on audio. Apple Music, Apple Podcast, Spotify, everywhere. We are finally back. Go search it out, check it out. We are there. YouTube, thank you for continuing to follow and watch us. Eric, how you doing, man?
Man, I am hanging in there. I had a good day on the golf course. You know what they say? A bad day on a golf course is a good day at work. Well, I actually had a good day on the golf course. So I don't even know what that qualifies as. It doesn't happen very often.
It qualifies as a miracle for some of us.
I know, right?
Brian, what's going on, man?
Not too much, man. Everything's going good. Thank you for your hard work getting the audio back. That's awesome. It's been too long without the audio. We're back now. So I can't complain. And OTAs, day one in the books.
That's right. We're going to touch on that in a minute. We got we learned some lessons about audio, right? And what to do and not do. We'll never do it again. Yeah, but look, tonight we got a special guest. You've heard him on this podcast before, Mr. Stephen Hammer, QB Spotlight on YouTube and social media. I'm going to bring him in. Look, he's Mr. 500,000 views on YouTube, 30,000 views here on this video, 30,000 views on that video. Quarterback breakdowns galore, the best in the business doing it, and he's going to talk to us about Sam Howell. Mr. Hammer, how's it going?
Hey guys, thanks for having me on. Thanks for the kind intro. Not deserved, but thank you for those numbers. I don't know who's watching my stuff. They probably just let it go on repeat. That's what the numbers kind of get up there. But excited to talk some football. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, excited to have you. And if you're not already checking him out, check him out on Twitter. One of the nicest dudes out there. Also YouTube, as we said, at QB Spotlight. His Shedeur Sanders videos go hard out there. Colorado loves this man. Okay.
Yeah. That's like a cheat code. If I haven't been doing very good view or haven't put a video, I just put a Colorado video out. That thing will spike up. So if you need some help with views, just find a way to make Colorado football tie in with Washington football, and that should help a bit.
The Deion Sanders effect. So, what I wanted to do was give you the floor to talk to us about your, pre-draft evaluation of Sam Howell, sort of what you see from him, what you like, what you don't like, all those things, because, you put out a video back during the draft process, I believe, of Sam Howell and really sort of went in depth about him. And I thought you had some extremely interesting thoughts. And this is a time of like a new season for Commanders fans where we got a quarterback. A lot of folks believe in Sam Howell despite his fifth-round draft selection. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Mr. Hammer, and take it away with your Sam Howell thoughts.
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, and I'll probably agree, like when it comes to the quarterback position, like our guess, your guess is pretty much as good as the GM's guess, right? When it comes to predicting who's going to be successful and who's not. So I think it really comes down to how they're being developed and who they have developing. And correct me if I'm wrong, but y'all just brought in the OC from Kansas City, right, to come to Washington, right? Yeah, so I think that's huge, right? I think that's huge and should be encouraging to any Washington fans. But coming out of college, because I really keep it more with college and really not a ton of NFL, but thought with Sam Howell in college there were several different things, right? He busted on the scene in 2019 as a freshman. I'm sure Washington fans kind of know this, but had a hell of a season, right? 38-something passing touchdowns, interceptions, something on those numbers. So his TD to interception ratio is, close to 6-1, which is outstanding as a freshman. Threw for a bunch of yards per attempt are way high. Year two comes around, 2020, had a pretty good season as well. And 2021 comes around, had a fine season. Things kind of went downhill a little bit as a team overall. So a few of that storyline kind of tells me a few different potential things. One, and this is something that you hear a lot of, the quarterback hit his ceiling. You hear the term thrown around a lot. In my field and who we work with and what we do, I like to kind of view it more as like maybe the coach hit his ceiling as opposed to the player hitting his ceiling. It's the coach's job to continue to develop and put him in position to succeed, right? So that's kind of the devil's advocate to that. And then number two, which is maybe along the lines of what happened, was the defense is solid offense over and over and over again, and they're able to play a little bit better against them in college, right? Then number three, maybe it's a combination of all those factors, which is probably the case. Like with Phil Longo's offense, it's all about what you're doing pre-snap to set up post-snap, right? So they're doing a bunch of horizontal movement, right? Pre-snap, bunch of people going in motion, trying to get defenders out of position, and then attack vertically, right? So they're trying to scheme open a lot of receivers, scheme open a lot of guys, which is great and fantastic. But at the same time, to play at the next level in the NFL, you can't rely on your OCs. You would like to, but you rely on your OC to scheme guys open. You have to throw your guys open. You have to be able to, 3rd and 10. You can't rely on any play action or any horizontal movement pre-snap. You have to throw your guy open, right? So that's the difference between Phil Long offense and the NFL offense. I just had to talk with a really high-level quarterback before coming on this podcast, actually, because I was interested in his thoughts on this, kind of comparing RPO system and schemes and NFL schemes and the differences of it. And the biggest difference is the quarterback has to do a lot more. The RPO stuff in college is kind of unrealistic. You got the lineman going 3 yards downfield. You really have one read where if someone's out of position, I can make a pop pass, right? When it comes to the NFL level, there's a lot more stuff going on. Linemen can't go downfield. It's a lot tougher to do that. But the combination, this is why I was excited to hear about y'all's new OC, is combining the two. There's a lot of kids get nicked and dinged on he's a system quarterback. He's only good in this system. The same time, I think that's okay. Like, there's nothing wrong with scheming guys open while you're still coaching him and teaching him, hey, when it's 3rd and 10, 3rd and 12, you got to be able to make that throw. So that's my long-winded answer of Sam Howell's journey through college and the view of his college offensive system, for lack of better terms, and the NFL system, for lack of better terms, which is kind of, getting better essentially, right, for quarterbacks. Like at Mahomes, they do a ton of pre-snap movement. Right? They're trying to scheme guys open. So if the best quarterback, one of the best quarterbacks in the league, is having success in that, then other teams should probably follow with that. So that's a long-winded answer on Sam Howell and kind of what I thought of him in college. Then, like, what I think he needs to do is to succeed with y'all is let him be him, but at the same time being developed to be able to make those throws. And we'll see if he's about it on those 3rd and 10, 3rd and 12s.
Yeah. When it comes to just sort of like his overall preparedness for the NFL, when you look at a guy like C.J. Stroud, in terms of like readiness for the NFL, I know you focus more on college, but like the term raw gets thrown around a lot. Like, is a guy like Sam Howell or Hendon Hooker, how you would view more raw, quote unquote?
I guess it would be their term, like, what do you define as raw, right? Like Sam Howell started for 3 years in the NFL, not in the NFL, in college, right? Like, is that raw? He has a ton of experience, but he hasn't played in that NFL style. So I would say every quarterback coming in is raw in their own right, if you will. I think it just depends on, what your definition of raw really is. Like Hendon Hooker, 2-year starter at Tennessee, started for about a year and a half or so, give or take, at Va Tech. Like, that's 3.5 years of college football. He's 25. Like, is he really raw? I guess maybe not. But and so I think every quarterback is raw to a degree coming in. The NFL is so different. I mean, it's night and day different than college. So like the learning curve is going to be something else. I would say every quarterback is raw to a degree, but as far as from experience goes, like a lot of these guys have been experienced. And I like C.J. Stroud too, by the way. You brought him up. I think he can have some success there.
Yeah, this is a CJ Stroud Stan podcast. We all like CJ Stroud quite a bit on this podcast. So when it comes to Sam Howell, a lot was made of his drop to the 5th round. I mean, it's something that really nobody saw coming. Even the people that thought he wasn't quite NFL ready didn't see him going that low. Most people had him projected 2nd, maybe dropping into the 3rd round. You saw him fall all the way to 5. I am of the opinion that was a good thing for him, because because of what you said, the Longo offense is not exactly an NFL. And I think the same thing with Hooker this year, how he fell to the 3rd round when everybody had him go. Round 1 would have been a disaster for Hendon Hooker. I think that a chance to sit behind a developed veteran quarterback, learn how to prepare in the NFL, learn NFL concepts, even if Scott Turner's offense was nothing like what he's going to be running with Bieniemy. The fact that he's been in that NFL. NFL cycle, NFL practice schedule. He's got his routine down. He understands the concepts, what he needs to do. By all accounts, he improved greatly last year, and he was ready to start that last game. And I think we saw it. So I guess I would ask, do you share the opinion that maybe the drop to the 5th round really did him a favor?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And it's interesting. I was listening to a podcast today and one recently, and they were talking about quarterbacks being drafted. And they said that the difference between quarterbacks drafted in the first round, the second round, and kind of so on. And it was actually Deshaun Kaiser, the former Notre Dame quarterback, and then Christian Hackenberg, the former Penn State quarterback, on the same podcast. I want to give him credit. I'm so bad with this stuff, but anyways, I'll think of the name and give him credit. I'm sure he's a fan of the show. But anyways, it's a former Penn State tight end that's doing these interviews, and he's talking to Christian Hackenberg and he's talking to Deshaun Kaiser in 2 separate interviews, second round picks. And they had some really interesting stuff to say, which I think actually plays in favor of Sam Howell, which I'll get to in a second. But they said quarterbacks drafted in the second round are generally thought of as quarterbacks who are basically first-round picks, like the same expectation on second-round picks. Second-round pick quarterbacks are on. The same expectation on first-round pick quarterbacks are on second-round pick guys, but the investment isn't as high. So if I draft a quarterback, number 2 overall, he's getting 25 whatever million, pretty much guaranteed. If he has a really, really bad first year, this goes off the charts and is awful, I'm still going to keep him around for another year or 2 because I have so much invested. A second round guy, I'm probably have the exact same expectations. Like, right, say he was a 38th overall pick, like high second round pick. I'm drafting him to come be the guy at some point. I'm paying him $4 million guaranteed, something like that. And let's say he has an awful year, I can be like, you know what, I'll only put $4 million in you. Like, we're not going to stick around. Like, you're out of here type deal. So I think the fact that Howell actually didn't fall into that category and he was drafted a little bit later, like, you have more leeway. If you're a 5th round pick and you start great, you're an underdog. If you're a 5th round pick and you're a backup, well, it's like, yeah, we drafted you in the 5th round. Of course you're a backup, or whatever round Howell was drafted in. And so I think if you can if you're a quarterback, you want to draft in the 1st round because you want to get paid. But if not, like, go in the later rounds because the expectations aren't going to be as high, 3rd, 4th, 5th round pick, maybe a better time to come and develop. And it's okay if you're a backup because you were drafted late. But if you become a starter, it's a great Cinderella story type deal. So I think in Howell's case, I think it does fit him well to get drafted a bit later. I hope that answered the question a little bit. Sorry for the long kind of explanation on stuff.
I just made a long-winded statement and tried to shoehorn a question there at the end to make it look like it wasn't the Eric show. So it's cool. It's a great answer.
I got a question, and you can relate it to Hal if you want, but I think it's more general. And as you go about your process and you're evaluating quarterbacks year to year, different kinds of quarterbacks, like, you always see, clips of quarterbacks making a special play, right? They're tossing off tacklers, would-be tacklers, are scrambling around and they throw a ball 70 yards downfield. Great play. Everybody goes on. Everybody wants that guy. How do you balance that with, like, hey, those are great plays. We need those types of plays. We want those types of plays. But, hey, can you get to that 3rd step, get the ball out, on time? Can you find your check down? Can you do some of the normal things that none of us like to talk about, but are necessary to get to those explosive plays, those eye-popping plays? Like, how do you kind of balance that when you're looking at it? Or do you just kind of focus on one thing, or do you just look for guys who can do those kind of special things?
Yeah, I think that's a super, super good question. I think, like, and take it for what it's worth, no one's paying me big bucks to break down quarterbacks, but like looking at the QBs, I almost want to just be looking on the small stuff. And then if guy flashes, that's great. If he flashes again, that's great. If he flashes, make these sexy plays nonstop, okay, maybe there's something deeper to that. If he's just flashing here and there, but it's not doing the small stuff, then that's probably not a guy I would really want to take a chance on, even if he has potential and he's raw. You know what I mean? Now, a guy like Anthony Richardson, he was flashing every game. He's a guy that's like, hey, it's that type of stuff is worth it. You know what I mean? If he pans out, that whatever rookie contract deal is going to seem like pennies to him. But I think to your point, I think you have to go in and look at the small stuff. And if wow factors jump off, then great. That's an addition to it. If wow factors don't jump, but he does a lot of really good stuff, we chalk that up as well. And then if you have a guy like Bryce Young, who does all the little stuff great, who has wow factors every play, then you're like, hey, like this is a no-brainer. I could care less about his 5'10", whatever 100-pound body. Like, quarterbacks that are 6'4", 220 are getting hurt just as often as little guys. So, I'm like, bump that. Like he does, he's able to do the wow plays and the simple plays. So I think you go in looking for the simple stuff, what he does well, and the wow stuff is easy to break down. Anyone on YouTube break down the wow plays because he's off a tackler, jumping off, one leg and dumping it right. So if we can like dive into the small stuff and let the wow stuff kind of be additions, then I think that's kind of at least how I would kind of look at evaluating a quarterback.
Awesome.
So the NFL game is evolving. We have this debate a lot. Brian is a significant supporter of mental processing as a quarterback. That's his deal. I like talent and traits, right? Just because I think the NFL is evolving to a more simplistic offensive implementation that allows guys that are maybe not as advanced in processing to be more successful as time goes on. How critical are both of those attributes at the college level, do you think?
Yeah, I think as a quarterback, of course, you want both, right? If you have both, that's when you have your Bryce Youngs, right? But at the same time, just for quarterback success, I think you can get away with being a pretty darn good college quarterback with just being a talented, athletic guy, just being able to run the RPO system really well. But at the same time, you don't see it as much in this day and age football. But let's say 10, 15 years ago, you could get by with it in college by just being a guy that could process information, right? But just being a guy that was like mentally able to hit my check down, go through my third reads, but now game shifting. So I think it leads more to like the talent, the ability side of things for the college game. But of course, you want to marry both those qualities. That's what makes a good player. And that's usually what, ends up being the Heisman winner, the guy that can do both of those. So like the Bryce Youngs of the world are just the perfect examples using this year's draft class. I even like CJ Stroud as a great example using this year's draft class. I mean, what more do you want the guy to do? I know he was getting like crucified by the media before the draft, but I mean, I don't know, it looks pretty good to me. Numbers look pretty good. Like tape don't lie. Maybe coach take him to development at the next level. But yeah, I think for the college game, I think you can get by and be really good on a really good team with talent alone, or just a mental standpoint, or in a rare occasion, just be an average on both. If you have a really good team around you, like Alabama's old quarterbacks of like the 2000s, from John Parker Wilson to Brody Croyle to, AJ McCarron, like they just had to be just solid guys because their teams are so much better than everyone else. You know what I mean? So I think in a rare occasion that could potentially happen, but we haven't seen that, happen in quite some time. It seems like every team that's doing well has a dude at the quarterback position.
So we're going to turn this into the Anthony Richardson Declassified podcast, and I apologize. Here's my thing about Anthony Richardson. I know you mentioned him. It seems like you like him. I guess what would be the NFL comp that you would give him, or the player comp? Because I heard a lot of Cam Newton comps, which I absolutely hated, because Cam Newton in college, that was a force of nature, and Anthony Richardson was just a guy. The production really wasn't there with Richardson, so I don't see it. I see more of a Josh Allen, which is what you hope for, that he can turn into that. But coming out, that's what I see, somebody who's really raw, and it's a huge gamble. Way bigger gamble than a lot of people are willing to admit, it seems like. Is that fair, or what do you see as kind of a player comp for him?
Yeah, I think the Josh Allen comp is probably awesome. I think that's actually probably spot on, because as you were thinking, I was like, man, who am I going to say? Jamarcus Russell, like, who's a guy that was big and athletic, didn't. But I think the Josh Allen comparison is great for the simple fact, like Richardson flashed every single game. There was something he did where you're like, holy smokes, like God only made like a handful of those, and you have to be one of those guys he made, but at the same time, like not how much with college football, but I would probably, I don't know how much I would bet, but I would bet a decent amount that the quarterback production at Florida this year is actually going to be better than it was last year, even though the player isn't as good as Richardson, or the talent isn't as good. It's because, and you even mentioned it, like the production really was there. He had a few games, but he really didn't have a lot of very good games. He had a lot of really good moments within games. He had some good moments against Georgia, against Tennessee, against Utah in that first game. They opened the season, but there was just nothing consistent. But to the point, and the head coach at Florida, Billy Napier, like right now, it's kind of like the whole Florida fan base is just like after him right now. But Napier's offense is kind of like under question. Like maybe it's the best position for a quarterback to succeed, right? So I think if you draft a guy like Richardson, you just believe in your ability to develop talent and develop the guy. And you're like he's not going to hit his ceiling. If he does hit his ceiling, then maybe it's on me. Like a guy with that much talent, like I'm getting paid millions of dollars in the NFL to develop guys, and you're giving me a guy with that much talent. I should be able to do something with him, right? I should be able to make him a competent. I should be able to do something. That's kind of my opinion on him. Again, who knows what all these NFL guys look for in the draft, but I think everything you said is fair. Where it's like, hey, he probably didn't do this much. The free tool, the arm strength, the Josh Allen comparison is perfect. Like Josh Allen was like at Wyoming running like a bum offense, from I think Craig Rowe is the head coach, or Craig Song, and it's just like a horrible offense that makes you want to throw up. But people could see a few flashes from Allen. They're like, man, that guy's, there's something there. And when you get to quarterback or you get to a place like Buffalo where they develop him, then you have a shot there. So I'm sure the culture hoping to have a Josh Allen type guy.
Yeah, and I think Shane Steichen is the best coach to land Richardson because of what he did with Jalen Hurts. So I think it's a really good situation for AR to be in. I'm not convinced. Jalen Hurts is just a different breed, though. He's just got the perfect combination of like he's got the athletic traits, he's got the work ethic to improve, and he's got the desire to want to get better. That's a special quarterback. I'm not sure that Richardson's there. I'm gonna shut up about Richardson and the Colts though. But thank you for your answer.
Fair. Hey, Jalen Hurts is born in Texas, so that's why he's got that extra it factor.
That's right.
All them Texas guys.
Gotcha. Well, explain Colt McCoy to me then.
Hey, someone didn't develop him very good. I don't know. It wasn't Colt's fault.
I will say Colt McCoy's arm looked different before Alabama tore it off in that national championship game. Like afterwards, like he could barely get the ball down the field. Like I strongly feel like the trajectory of his career changed when he got hit by that Alabama defender, and like it was like the second quarter in that national championship game. Like it was just over after that.
Yeah, you could be right. At the same time, like Colt McCoy's bank account's looking pretty good right now.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Career backups, that's the best gig you can get, man. It really
That's
is.
good you can get.
Like, I would trade lives with Chase Daniel in a heartbeat.
Oh man,
yes.
Talk about stealing the system. Yeah.
Hey, you got something, Brian?
Yeah, I and hopefully I don't steal yours. And not to get too far ahead because we haven't even gotten to this NFL season yet. Next year's crop of college quarterbacks that is coming out, to me, I think is going to be.
Hey, before you get there, I got one more Sam Howell thing because I love where you're going with that. Real quick, draft class wise, there's a lot to be made about where Sam Howell went that Eric brought up. I saw something from Mel Kiper and which is Todd McShay talking about where Sam Howell would have went last year, or where before the draft last year. Kiper said he was a third round guy. I think McShay said he was third to fourth round guy. He was Kiper's fifth best quarterback, McShay's eighth best quarterback. Where, like in this draft class, if had Howell come out this year, where would he have been in your sort of list of quarterbacks, like with Stroud, Richardson, Hooker? Do you have a thought on that real quick?
Yeah, that's a good question. It probably wouldn't change the top four at all for me. Let's see, who was the fifth quarter? Like you had the Clayton Tunes, you had Hendon Hooker, you had all those guys kind of drafted in those mid rounds. So I don't know if it would really change all that much. He's probably that 3rd to 5th round range for me in this draft class. The top four pretty solidified, and then you could probably make an argument after that.
Okay, fair enough. Sorry, Brian, all yours.
Next year's crop of college quarterbacks that are coming out, I think is going to be one of the more exceptional groups, 1 through 5, 6, potential quarterbacks. We all know the top name, right? Or the top 2 names, right? Caleb Williams, Drake May. Those are easy ones for everyone to talk about. Oh, generational this, excellent that, franchise this. But some of the guys later on, in particular, there are 2 that I like a lot. Michael Penix Jr. is one that I've watched. The first game I saw of him at Indiana against Ohio State in 2020, he was the best quarterback. He was the best player on the field. He threw for 491 yards. I was like, okay, who's this guy? He has no help. How's he doing this? Grace.
You muted yourself.
Grayson McCall, another quarterback that that I've seen play, who just, the ball is where it's supposed to be every time, on time, all the time. Anybody outside of, again, we know Drake May, we know Caleb Williams. Anybody after that who you like or who you think is somebody we should be watching or talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. I think to your point on Michael Penix, he's definitely a guy right now. He's definitely right now. If you look at all these draft stuff, he's definitely in that top 5 range as far as quarterbacks go. I mean, he led all of Power 5 in passing yards last year. Not even the numbers, but he had such a big improvement from his time at Indiana. Like the 2020 season kind of spiked. That had a good season. I think that's this year that they beat Penn State, and he had that diving touchdown. If y'all remember that controversial finish. Had a good season there. Then in 21, it was a bit down. I think it was a good decision to transfer, come back, and had a great season last year, right? So one of the strongest arms in college football. And if he has a similar season like he had last year, it's going to be year 6 in college. And kudos for him for taking full advantage of it, staying here, back, and then going to get paid. So I think Michael Penix is a guy. To Grayson McCall, your point, he's a guy who I really like too. He had, I think, 8 picks in 3 years starting, right? And they throw the ball a ton, takes care of the football. His yards per attempt is way up there, plus.
He can run too.
He can run too. Yeah, the ball jumps out. And he's a guy who several Power 5 schools wanted him to enter the portal, and he did in the portal for a little bit, came back. But he was a guy you heard Auburn and Florida, schools trying to get him. So that tells you that there's some talent there. His biggest thing will be the offensive system he ran. Coach Chadwell, who's now the Liberty coach, and he was the head coach there. It was a very what's the best way to put it? Like a unique offense. So all triple option type schemes with passing game built on top of that. That kind of makes sense from Gunn. But he's a guy if someone believes in his talent, then yeah, for sure. He's a more underrated guy. Quinn Ewers is a guy from pure talent alone from Texas that how you were talking about Williams and Drake May, that's how people were talking about Quinn Ewers when he was in high school as a recruit. He was can't miss type guy. If he comes out and balls out this year, he 100% will be a first round pick if he comes and balls out. He should with that offense. Some good stuff going on. So you got Quinn Ewers, JJ McCarthy could be a guy that slips in that range if he has another good year at Michigan, especially if you lead them to a Big Ten championship again, beating Ohio State again. A guy who I know you'll probably know I like is KJ Jefferson from Arkansas, but he's a guy who, if he has a good year with the new offensive system, Dan Enos, which is much more NFL traditional or traditionally more in NFL style, then he could be a guy on draft boards. Right now, he's not probably looked at very high, but the potential is there. He's the best SEC quarterback coming back, in my opinion. So those are a few guys there. I know I'm probably missing you, but off the top of my head. Oh, also Sam Hartman from Notre Dame. He could be someone to remember. He could be almost Sam Howell-ish. You know what I mean? They had a similar-ish offense when he was it's a little different. So
one last thing that you mentioned there with Penix and Hartman, some of these guys who have gotten NIL deals to come back. And they have played an extended amount of time in college. I know a lot of time evaluators go, a guy who stays longer, there's more to pick apart, right? There's more tape. Mm-hmm. Whereas a guy who's only played, 8 games, 9 games, 10 games, 13 games, there's less there. There's more intrigue, but the less you know. But they seem to get, higher praise for, lesser body of work. Does that affect you, or how do you look at that when you see a guy like a Hartman who's been there, 12 years in college, it seems like, yeah. Or Penix, who had a couple of injuries and had to stay longer?
Yeah, I think one that the NIL thing is interesting, right? Because some of those guys who are late round picks are making more, going back to college this year than they would have been if they declared. There's also a few things in Hartman's case. I think he probably would have been a mid-round guy maybe, but he's probably trying to show that he can, different off play at a bit at a higher level and have a chance to make a run at the playoff potential. So he could improve his draft stock. I think, to answer your question, the best example of that I can remember is Kenny Pickett coming back for his 6th year when everyone said he should have gone, because he would have been a late round pick at best if he leaves after his 5th year. So he comes back from his COVID year. It's his 6th year. He's 38 in college, right? But he plays himself into a Heisman winner, first round pick, set for life. That's a great example of using using the law essentially, right? Like using the law to your advantage. Like all of us, like whatever wiggle room we can find within like the tax laws, we're going to use it, right? As long as it's legal, right? So if him, it's like I can come back and play for 1,000 years. Why not come back? If I ball out, great, I'm a first round pick. If I don't, I got some NIL money. I'm probably still a late round pick. And I'll, go from there. So I think it's kind of a no-brainer unless you're really high picked to come back, get some NIL money. If you freaking kill it, then you got a shot to get the bag the following year, if you will.
Awesome.
Hey, what about Joe Milton? And because they got that freshman coming in, Lama, whatever his name is, Cali. What
I don't think that's right.
It's close. It's close. Is Joe Milton somebody to take serious at Tennessee?
I think for the simple fact that Anthony Richardson just got drafted, 4th overall, and he started, 13 games in college and was like 17 touchdowns, 9 picks, that type of deal. So he got drafted off potential and talent alone. So I think, he's someone to take seriously based off what just happened and based off the potential that is there. Now, is that going to happen? I don't know. I think he's in an offense that can help facilitate what he's good at. And he actually did really well in the last 2 games that he started on last year when Hendon got hurt. So if he can play like that again, then absolutely. But at the same time, if he's back to what he was at Michigan and when he first started at Tennessee, then, probably by week 6, 7, or 8, that Nico 5-star is going to be the kid taking over. But I like Milton. He's got a huge, strong arm in college football right now. For sure. So that right there, if he can play average, he's getting drafted at some point, right? Him and someone else that is surprisingly I've heard about, like NFL teams locking, is Jaden Daniels from LSU, who had a really, really good season last year. And I think LSU, not to get too college-y on y'all, has the best quarterback room in all of college football. Like I think their backup, Garrett Nussmeier, I think he would start at the majority of all ACC schools. But Jaden Daniels, he's such a threat with his legs that you take some of the inconsistencies passing because, one, he took care of the football. So he'll take a few extra sacks here and there because he only threw 3 picks. There's times that kills you because he's not throwing on rhythm, missing 3. He's just holding the ball in the pocket. But then when he busts for 60 yards, you can live with that, But if he can be a bit more consistent, Jay and Daniels that is, then he could raise open the draft as well. Garrett Nussmeier is an absolute dude. One of the best quarterbacks, I think, in college football. He's a backup. So just my thoughts.
Yeah, getting back to Joe Milton, I think Hendon Hooker probably hates Joe Milton because he probably cost him about $1.5 million because when Joe Milton stepped in and put up the same kind of numbers that Hooker had been putting up, I think it kind of took the wind out of Hooker's sails just a little bit when he just this guy just rolls in. Off the bench and, throws a bunch of touchdowns just like, Hooker did. It's definitely that kind of showed it's about the offense more so than about the talent. But credit to all those guys. Joe Milton he's going to be fun to watch this year because I think, he's got a little bit more, I'd say more upside than even Hendon Hooker did, being that he's a little younger and he's got a cannon.
Yep. He's got it's hard to, as an evaluators, it's hard to even if he's struggling, even if he's throwing picks, even if he's inaccurate, when you see him ball, it's easy to get this zoned in on it and fall in love with the arm. It's just as much as you don't want to admit it, you're like, man, that guy can throw though.
He can sling it, yeah. It's impressive.
But he can throw it, we can fix it. It's can you? But yeah, he can sling it.
Yeah, that guy's his feet are all over the place from what I've seen. So it'll be interesting to see how he progresses a little bit this year.
What about Shador? Tell us about Shador, man. Is he going to be the next great Tua Tagovailoa, Drew Brees guy, or what?
Man, I hope so. So people go back and watch the video they did and they spike up even more, So I sure hope so. But no, in all seriousness, he's a guy who if you watch the film, you take with a grain of salt for the simple fact the competition they're playing is just so much lower than what they'll be playing now. But at the same time, I think he did a lot of little things really good that transfer over to big time college football, right? I think whether that's from his dad teaching him or being around it, he's just obviously been developed really well. He's got a good arm, he's a good athlete, but it's not like it's not like it jumps out the screen, right? He doesn't have a Joe Milton arm. He's not some crazy dynamic runner, you know what I mean? but I think he does a lot of good things well. Number one, like he's processing defense, like post-snap, pre-snap to post-snap. And that's probably a credit to his dad just teaching him. That's one that kind of jumps off. And then he's able to kind of go through his reads as the snap happens. So I think he does a lot of small things well, which, you hear Deion Sanders, you always think of like big, flashy, sexy things. But I think in the quarterback position, if you do a bunch of small things well, kind of like, we talked about at the big podcast, if you do a bunch of really, really small things well, then by the end of the season, you threw 30 touchdowns and only 7 picks and 3,000 yards passing. Hey, it's a pretty dang good season. So I think Sanders has a lot of potential. One, his last name is going to help him. Two, the ability to, bring the players in or bring them from the transfer portal and like give Colorado actual like guys, essentially, even though they had some good receivers leave. I think he's going to be in a good position. So whether it's this year or next year, he'll have a lot. If he doesn't, then well, I guess I'm wrong.
So it sounds like you said Deion believes in mental processing for a quarterback. That's perfect.
Here we go. You're gonna start a war. You're gonna start a war right here. I bridge the gap between these two.
Yeah.
I want a good passer with good mobility. That's what I
right.
want in the pass.
Exactly.
These guys are the opposite. I'm looking for Patrick Mahomes. These guys are looking for Ellie wants a running back, and Brian wants Tom Brady. That's
So Ellie wants to put like Ronnie Brown back there and run the Wildcat.
Yes, he wants to run the wing T. He wants to run the double wing. He wants Sammy Ball. That's what
whatever gets the dub.
Yeah.
Is Bo Nix good or not? I feel like he's been in college for.
Bo Nix has been in college since I was in college. Like I think I had a couple classes with that dude.
A long time in college. Yeah.
But he's
actually, I remember watching his dad play. I remember Patrick Nix back at Auburn when I was like in high school. He was the quarterback there.
Wow.
Yeah. I think Bo Nix is legit for a few reasons, but I think he's a perfect example of like the Kenny Pickett effect, like using all your eligibility and just like playing. At some point, someone's going to take He might not last long in the NFL. Who knows? But if he has a year like last year, he'll be up there in that potential top few guys or top half of quarterbacks taken. But he's definitely a guy that has benefited from a new offensive system, which is kind of all you need. Like at Auburn, it was just like nauseating to watch. Like because man, he does have all the tools. There's a reason why he was a 5-star quarterback. But, running that Gus Malzahn offense, and no disrespect to him, but it's a tough quarterback to develop where you're relying on like a jet fake sweep to pass to like one option downfield. And if he's not there, then you got to run. And so I think the fact that he's in this Oregon game and Will Stein, the new OC, is awesome. He was here at UTSA. Recruit some kids down here in our neck of the woods in Texas, and now he's an up-and-coming guy. Did great stuff at UTSA. Like their quarterback Frank Harris is off the charts, and now he's up here his first year at Bo Nix. First year at Oregon with Bo Nix. I think his level should stay the same where it's at, and so maybe they'll get some drafted higher, maybe not. But as far as college quarterbacks goes, he's definitely arguably top 5-6 guy right now coming back.
That's cool, man. Hopefully we're not talking about which quarterbacks we need to take next year, but we like to be prepared just in case. And you have prepared us, Stephen. We appreciate you checking in as always. Once again, go check out Stephen on social media at QB Spotlight. He does a great podcast. Check him out on YouTube as well. Anywhere you can find content, go check out Mr. Hammer at QB Spotlight. They are the quarterback aficionados. So we appreciate you once again. Hopefully we can talk to you soon. And Eric and Brian, let's go ahead and get into OTA talk as we let Stephen go here. And we'll go ahead and finish up with OTAs. Brian, let's talk about what happened at OTAs first day. Sound like pretty positive all around for the team?
Yeah. So first day of OTAs, and let's get this thing here out of the way first. There were a couple of no-shows. I'm going to give you the surprising one first. Left tackle Charles Leno was a no-show. Now, these are voluntary, but, of course, you would like everybody there, especially for an offensive player who we're learning a new offense this year, right? Everybody, offensive linemen, receivers, quarterback, brand new offense, new offensive coordinator. Charles Leno was not there, but again, voluntary. One defensive player was reported Montez Sweat wasn't there. He was there. He just didn't dress for whatever reason, didn't participate. So don't know what that was about, but he was there. But, of course, our star defensive end, Chase Young, was not there. So we know there will be a little bit of controversy behind that, whether he should be, he shouldn't be. He hasn't done a whole lot of anything these last 2 seasons, a lot of it due to injury, but some other of it just due to lack of production. He just hasn't had any production, but he was not there as well. Outside of that, a lot of good reports. I think all the running backs looked good except for Chris Rodriguez. He got himself in a little bit of trouble. Eric Bieniemy yelled at him. Apparently he wasn't moving fast enough in some drills. So EB had some choice words that I can't repeat on here, but he got after him a little bit. Terry McLaurin, looked like a number one wide receiver like he always does, and taught Emmanuel Forbes a lesson or two. Put a couple of moves on him during 7-on-7. And, the defense, is it Quan Martin or Jatavius?
Quan. You're both correct, but Quan is, I think, what he wants to be called.
Quan Martin looks like he was getting a lot of the reps as the nickel corner. Kendall and Benjamin St. Juste were your top two corners, and then Emmanuel Forbes in after that. Fidarian Mathis, Ellie, your favorite player. He looked healthy. Had no issues, in terms of moving around or anything like that. So it's good to see that he's back. All the other defensive players were there. Jamin Davis, Cody Barton were there. Cam Curl was there. Derek Forrest, everybody else was there. They all looked good. And last but not least, quarterbacks. Sam Howell apparently was extremely sharp. He only had 4 incompletions on the day, and 3 of those were drops. The other incompletion, he just overthrew Brian Robinson, but the ball was on time, accurate. But also Jacoby Brissett had a handful of reps. He didn't have as many as Sam, but he looked sharp as well too. He looked good. And that's really where kind of we stand with, and also to note too, and this is something that a lot of the beat reporters talked about in the last week or two. Eric Bieniemy changed the practice schedule. So the team will meet first. They'll have their team meetings or position meetings. And then once the meetings are done, they'll go right to the practice field. So that way, as they're installing the offense, the quarterbacks, in particular Sam, because he's a young quarterback, will get to then implement what they taught in the classroom. And the reason for that, it's a better way to learn the offense, a faster way to learn the offense, and get those reps while it's fresh in the player's head. Hey, this is what I just went through in the classroom. Now we're going to go do it out on the field. So that's something to keep in mind as we move through OTAs and into training camp. Is a process that Bieniemy took. Has changed. And, really the other reports were Bieniemy was in charge. He could be heard everywhere, giving directions, getting guys, telling guys in the huddle, hey, where's the center? Take charge of the huddle. We need to be moving faster. Apparently, the offense was moving at a much crisper pace than previous years, in and out of the huddle, executing plays. So apparently, it looked like a professional operation as opposed to a couple of years past.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you hear a lot about the energy at practice being different too, which is really important. And what you want to see from Howell at this time of the year is just, does he understand the offense? I mean, nobody should get too low on him because of drops or incompletions or anything like that. It's just, does he seem like he's doing the right thing in the offense at this time of year? That's really all that's important. As you start to progress towards training camp, then you want to see him really put it all together. So it sounds like he is, getting command of the offensive system, right, and what he's being asked to do. So I think that's a really good sign. I was looking at our notes from last year at OTAs around this time last year, just to sort of like a reminder that, you can't always trust what you see at this time of year for any player on the field. But my number 10 thing last year was Curtis Samuel was back. He looked fast and fluid, which he did for most of the season. He just was used incorrectly by the offensive coordinator. My number 9 thing was Cole Turner might be a guy to watch. Well, we're still watching.
Yeah, we're watching and sit on the sidelines. Yeah.
My number 8 thing was Sam Howell's arm was electric, right? And it said Howell's arm might be the most wow thing at OTAs had Wentz not been there. So that's still true. And that did manifest. Number 7 was Brian Robinson looks the part. That was really more speaking to his size and physicality. You noted on social media that it looks like he may have dropped a little bit of weight, right?
Yeah, it was noticeable. He looked a little bit slimmer, and I don't know if that is because, hey, he's healthy now, and so he could, actually work out and not rehab from injuries, or if the coaches were like, hey, we need you to be more explosive, lose some weight, lose 5 pounds, lose 10 pounds, whatever the case is. He did look a lot slimmer. I mean, it was kind of noticeable. Not that Brian Robinson was a real, heavy back or anything like that, but it was pretty noticeable that he looked a little thinner.
Yeah, and if he adds explosiveness, to his game, that's a game changer for him. That's really the downfall for him is just he's so plodding. But I think if he's changed his body and his physical presence, that'd be very interesting to see. My number 6 thing last year was Deron Payne and just his size. I'm curious to see what Fedarian Mathis looks like, physically in person. I'd love to see that. J.D. McKissick was my number 5 thing. He looks great. Well, he played about 30 minutes last year, and that was about it. Number 4 was Chase Young was at the facility. That was the big update. He's at the facility. And look where we are this year, right? He's not at the facility. But, in all honesty, as long as he's there when it really matters, that's what I care about. Now, is this a middle finger to the organization for not picking up the extension or the 5th-year option? I don't know. And truthfully, again, I don't care as long as Chase Young is healthy. And at the end of the year, we can figure out what Chase is or is not. That's the only thing that matters at this point in time. My number 3 thing, this is Gibson's backfield. Yeah, that did not last through training camp. So, a little overzealous there. Number 2 was Dotson was very impressive. That was something you noticed immediately.
Well, there was an update today. There were a couple of tweets about Dotson's size and a couple of pictures. Dotson's a small guy; he's never going to be big. But they all noted the same thing, that he added, a couple of pounds of muscle. Hopefully, right. So some people noted that he, if Brian Robinson lost a couple of pounds, Dotson found those pounds because he looked like he was a little bit heavier since he was I think 180 or something last year.
It's impressive because there were some left over, that there were any left over after Rodriguez found him. That dude's he's like a first grade pencil.
Well, he had a rough day today, so hopefully he gets a little bit better tomorrow, or else the enemy will be on him again.
Yeah, well, you could tell from those clips we saw him walking through the drills the other day. It was like, this can't be true. Anyway, Dotson was immediately impressive, and some guys you just know when you see him for the first time, you're like, that guy has it. Like, he's legit. He was one. And our number 1 thing was Wentz is impressive. It's hard to put into words the difference between Wentz and what we've had here previously. He's enormous. His arm is on a different level. He's in control of the offense and even corrected a running back when he motioned the wrong way pre-snap. So all in all, about 50% of those came true. 50% of them were like, what are you talking about, right, in hindsight? So I'm just encouraging everybody, don't get so low on players when you hear things. Maybe Chris Rodriguez, because that might be legit. But everybody else,
he's a defensive tackle size now.
He's Fedarian Mathis' replacement.
What do you guys think if the enemy uses him as a fullback? He blocks, he runs, short yardage type stuff. Because he seems to be having the size for it.
Yeah, he might have enough breath in his lungs to get him to the from 2 yards behind the offensive line, to 1 yard past the offensive line, clear a hole for somebody. Yeah, it's really disappointing for somebody to show up because he was listed at 225 in college.
Yeah.
And he showed up at 244. Come on, dude. That's a lot of, that's like hot pockets, on speed dial, right? That dude is, that's not a good look unless they're trying to bulk him up and he's not doing it well. He's not handling the bulk up, but man, he gained 20 pounds in the off season. That's rough.
And not carrying it well. That's the important part. It doesn't seem like it's working for him at that bigger size. And Bieniemy in Kansas City used tight ends as that fullback position. I would expect he'd do something similar here. Fullback is just not a position that NFL teams care about anymore, aside from San Francisco, right, with Juszczyk and things like that. But I don't see it, man. I think it's either he makes it as a running back or he doesn't, and then he's either practice squad or something else. I'd love to hear about what Jared Patterson's doing, Jonathan Williams, those guys, because I think those are probably more realistic options. We'll see. It's early, and I think one of the things that he'll have to go home with, him being Rodriguez, is do you want to be here or not? And if so, you need to get your body in shape before we come back for mini camps, right? So take it as a lesson learned and get going in the right direction and show that you belong in the NFL, right? So especially if what you're saying about Robinson is true. Robinson's developing another level to his game, which is adding some speed to his game, and we're hearing about Gibson and things like that. Well, you got to make an impression somehow, and going through drills slowly and being overweight is not going to get it done at the running back position in the NFL. But I like to hear that Bieniemy's holding him accountable.
Yeah. What do you guys think? The only other kind of bit of information was the offensive line, or at least the starting or the group that they put out there first. And now this could change by training camp or to the regular season. Was left tackle Cornelius Lucas, right? Leno wasn't there. Sadiq Charles at your left guard, Nick Gates as your starting center, Sam Cosmi as your right guard, and then Andrew Wiley as your right tackle. What do you guys think about that lineup?
Yeah, Sam Howell's going to have some running to do if that's the. I mean, that's not. Yeah, he can't be loving that. Obviously, you're in non-contact drills right now. Leno will be out there. He's more than serviceable at that position. And the other positions are there to be taken. Ron Rivera clearly doesn't care about upgrading the offensive line, and it shows. So we're going to have what we have. That's going to make or break the season, most likely, that offensive line. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I remember we were watching a game last year, not watching a game, but we were talking about a game last year. It could have been the Cowboys game. I don't remember, where it was like Heineke was like backed up on the 1 yard line or something like that. And then like as soon as they snapped it, I think he got sacked and fumbled. And it feels like maybe we should have learned from that, last year, where it was like none of our quarterbacks had time in the pocket to do anything, right, to be successful. I know they brought in some veterans, some guys that Bieniemy was familiar with, but the overall talent level probably isn't where we'd like it to be. Now, maybe Ron and Eric know something we don't. Eric Bieniemy, that is, not ETR.
Yeah, I know lots of things y'all don't.
But it's a wait and see, man, because offensive lines are as much about chemistry as they are about physical, traits and things like that. So they could gel really well together and just be a unit that plays, fast and free together as one. But we just haven't really seen that manifest under the Rivera tenure consistently.
Yeah, I think, for offensive line especially, you got to see those guys with the pads on. Their game is physicality all the way around. Doesn't matter whether it's a zone scheme, a gap scheme, it's physicality. But, I mean, really the biggest thing for the three interior spots is health. Is Sadiq Charles good enough to start? Yes, he's good enough to start. But he got hurt in practice last year. Like, he didn't even start, and he was like out. He was already missing games. Cosmi's good enough to start, but he hasn't played more than 9 games in a season. And that's really the biggest issue, because I think the depth on the offensive line isn't where it needs to be. And if we have to go to the rookie Braden Daniels at a guard spot, I think Ricky Strongberg will be fine. But, I mean, we've used 4 centers the past 2 years each season. That's ridiculous. I don't even know how that's possible, but we've done it. So that's not going to work, if he gets hurt or anything like that. So I think the guys can play. I'm just worried that they're not going to play for very long. They may last a handful of games, and then we're right back to square one again.
Well, never discount the stupidity of Scott Turner's offense too, that really led to the blocking scheme being so poor.
That's true.
And, I remember hearing Cooley break that down a number of times on his show last year. So I think we have to take what we saw under Scott Turner with a grain of salt, and maybe this offensive line is going to be better than we think, because this is what the enemy's putting together. The blocking schemes are going to help them, whereas the offense that Scott Turner put together helped nobody in particular. So we'll see. All in all, though, really happy to hear that things are seemingly going well at OTAs, and I look forward to more reports on that, because this time of year, that's really all you're getting, right, is the OTA information. So you got to really cling to what you got there. So anyway. All right. Eric, final thoughts?
Yeah. Brian, what you just touched on with Sadiq Charles getting hurt in practice last year, anybody who's freaking out about Chase Young not being there, that is exactly why. Chase Young doesn't have a long-term deal in place. He doesn't have security. He's not going to risk injury at a voluntary practice. That's just what it is. That's what Terry McLaurin did last year. It's what Deron Payne did last year. Like, that's just what what guys do when they don't have long-term security. So don't be surprised if Chase Young doesn't show up at OTAs this year. Don't freak out about it. If he's ready to play week 1 and he has a great year, which I think he will, that's going to be that. But you cannot risk injury if he's on the team. It's not like he's fighting for a roster spot. So you can't risk injury if you don't have long-term security. I completely understand why he's not there. I don't think it's as big a deal as some radio personalities in DC do. It's just the way the NFL works, and guys have limited careers. You have to maximize your earning potential. Getting injured at a voluntary practice is not a way to do that. So don't expect to see Chase Young out there in OTAs.
Definitely. Brian, final thoughts?
Final thoughts. Over the next couple of weeks, hopefully there should be, according to what we heard out of this owners meeting here, we should get a special meeting to get the final ratification or the final vote on the sale, and that will be great news. But I'm excited. Audio is back. Please go resubscribe, subscribe again, or just download the pod on your favorite audio platform, or check us out on YouTube. I can't wait. I can't wait for training camp. Are you guys going to go to training camp?
No. Ashburn is a long way away, man.
I am old, and it's hot. Ashburn is a swamp, so there will have to be some incentive to get me to go. Let's put it that way. I need special access or something.
Well, we'll see what we can do.
Okay.
Shoot, my final thoughts, man. Like, I really touched on them. Number one is like OTAs. Take everything with a grain of salt, but be excited and be happy. Really take the negatives with a grain of salt, because it's just that time of year where they're installing new things, they're learning things. So the mistakes are okay this time of year. This is when you want to make them, right? And you want to see that reduce over the course of the off season. But man, Chris Rodriguez, brother, get it in gear. I really want to see what he can do. They picked him for a reason. There's something they really like about him, but you got to come ready to play. And don't freak out about Forbes not being first team either.
No.
There's a process there. So be patient, let him grow, let him learn, and then hopefully we see him ball out on Sundays. So that's it. Commanders Declassified. We are out of here. Like, comment, subscribe, share, resubscribe, as Brian said. And I don't know, play golf this week. We are out of here. Peace.